He wore a plain white apron, his head down, quietly serving lunch in the school cafeteria. His hands moved with practiced rhythm, scooping, serving, smiling faintly at the students in line. Most people didn't give him a second glance. Just another cafeteria worker, right? Wrong. One parent, though, did notice him, and not in a good way. She walked in with her nose in the air, stilettos clicking like a metronome of superiority. Her gaze landed on him, and she scoffed loudly. "Didn't expect to see you here. Guess life really hit you hard, huh?" The room fell silent for a moment. You could feel the weight of her words hanging in the air. But what happened next turned the entire scene upside down. Because just moments later, her daughter came rushing in, eyes wide, breathless with excitement. She wasn't looking at her mom. She was staring at the man in the apron. "Oh my gosh," she gasped. "Can I have your autograph?" The room froze. The mother's smirk vanished instantly. Her eyes darted from her daughter to the man she'd just mocked, and for the first time, she looked unsure. Terrified, even. So, who was this man? Why did her daughter recognize him? And what made him more than just a lunch guy? That's the story we're diving into today. And trust me, it's one you'll never forget. But real quick, if you've ever judged someone too quickly, only to realize you had no idea what they'd been through, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. I read every single one. Smash that like button if you believe kindness costs nothing, and make sure to subscribe, because the twist we're about to reveal, it's real, it's emotional, and it's going to make you rethink the way you see people forever. You ready for this? Let's get into it. 3 months earlier, no one at Willow Creek Elementary had heard of Mr. Thomas. He wasn't introduced at any assembly. No special mention in the school newsletter. Just a quiet man in his 50s who showed up one Monday morning wearing a white apron and a gentle smile. He moved like someone who knew structure. Efficient, precise. The lunch line never backed up when he was around. The food was always warm, neatly arranged, and, surprisingly, tasty. Teachers noticed how he took pride in the little things, like making sure the mashed potatoes were never lumpy, and the fruit was always fresh. The kids loved him. Not because he tried to be cool, but because he listened. If a student looked down, he'd ask if they were okay. He remembered names, allergies, and even birthdays. He brought calm energy to a room that was usually chaotic. But no one knew where he came from. And no one asked. Except Michelle Barrington. Michelle was the unofficial queen of the PTA. Always the first to volunteer, especially if there were photo ops. She had a reputation for being involved, though her involvement usually came with sharp comments, backhanded compliments, and a strong desire to control everything. The first time she saw Mr. Thomas, she narrowed her eyes. There was something vaguely familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. "He looks like that guy from," she started to say to another mom, trailing off with a smirk. Never mind. Probably just a lookalike. But her curiosity turned into something uglier, judgment. Week by week, she poked and prodded. Loud enough for others to hear. Kind of sad, right? Going from who knows what to serving mac and cheese in a hairnet. No one corrected her. No one defended him. Most just stayed quiet. Mr. Thomas? He never reacted. He'd smile politely and go back to work. There was a stillness to him, a humility that confused people like Michelle. She took his silence as weakness. But it wasn't. He was choosing peace. That Friday, the day of the school's big fall festival, Michelle was in full command mode. She barked instructions, rearranged decorations, and reminded everyone how much work she had done. Walking into the cafeteria to check on refreshments, she found Mr. Thomas loading up trays of cookies. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms strong, a faded tattoo just barely visible on his wrist. She stared at him for a second longer than usual. Then she smirked. "So, this is what you do now? Cafeteria duty?" He looked up, calm as ever. "It's honest work." She let out a low chuckle. "Guess everyone falls sometime." He didn't respond, just nodded and turned back to his work. That's when the door swung open, and in came Ava, Michelle's daughter. Bright-eyed, 12 years old, holding her phone like it was a lifeline. The moment she spotted Mr. Thomas, she gasped. "M.O.M. That's him." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "Him who?" Ava ran toward the counter. "Mr. Thomas, you're really here. Can I get your autograph?" The room went quiet. Michelle's face went pale, and for the first time, she had nothing to say. For a full 5 seconds, Michelle didn't move. Her daughter had just asked the cafeteria worker for an autograph in front of the entire refreshment crew, 2 teachers, and a handful of curious parents nearby. Mr. Thomas looked down at Ava, clearly surprised, but not shocked. He smiled, soft and humble, and said, "You really want my autograph?" Ava was practically vibrating. "Are you kidding? I follow your podcast. My uncle showed me your old videos. Your TED Talk was so cool. You're, like, famous." Michelle's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Mr. Thomas chuckled gently. "Well, I'm not sure about famous, but I'm glad you liked them." He reached into his apron, pulled out a small notebook, and signed his name. Ava grinned like she'd just met a superhero. One of the teachers stepped closer. "Wait, you're the Thomas E. Hart?" A couple of parents perked up. The name was familiar. Michelle's voice finally returned, nervous, cracked. What's going on?" The teacher turned to her. "He's the guy who gave that viral talk a few years ago. On resilience. It was everywhere. I used it in a lesson plan last semester." Mr. Thomas nodded modestly. "That's me. Former professor. Researcher. Consultant. I used to travel a lot, speak a lot. Then, well, life shifted." Michelle looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. He continued, calm and matter-of-fact. "I took care of my mother during her final years. When she passed, I realized I didn't want to go back to chasing conference halls and airport lounges. I wanted peace. Purpose." Ava added excitedly, "And he talks about finding meaning in small things. It's in his podcast, How Little Acts Matter. Like working in a cafeteria." Michelle blinked, trying to piece it all together. The man she had mocked, the one she laughed at behind his back, was someone her daughter admired. Someone respected by educators. Someone who had chosen this life, not fallen into it. Mr. Thomas went back to arranging trays. "I've learned that people often confuse titles with value. But you can serve from a stage or a soup line. What matters is that you serve." Silence. Then the whispers started. "I think I saw his interview on NPR. Wasn't he on a panel with Simon Sinek? I think he wrote that book about post-traumatic growth." Michelle stepped backward, her authority slipping away with every revelation. But it wasn't just embarrassment. It was discomfort. Because deep down, she knew she hadn't just judged a man, she had dismissed wisdom, kindness, and depth, all because it didn't come in a polished package. And Ava? She didn't care that he wore an apron. She saw value where her mother saw status. As the festival began and people filled the cafeteria, Mr. Thomas continued his work, serving juice boxes, refilling cookie trays, and smiling at the kids. He didn't gloat, didn't expose Michelle. He didn't need to. The truth had already spoken for itself. Later that evening, Michelle stood alone by the wall of the cafeteria, sipping lukewarm cider. She watched her daughter laughing with Mr. Thomas, asking questions about books and ideas Michelle herself had never even heard of. It was a strange feeling, being sidelined in a world she thought she ran. One parent came over and whispered, "Hard to believe, huh? Man like that just quietly serving food while raising better humans than most of us." Michelle forced a smile but said nothing. Her inner voice, once so loud, was suddenly quiet. She thought about all the times she dismissed people who didn't fit. The way she valued resumes over kindness, appearances over substance. And now her daughter looked up to a man who didn't flaunt his achievements, who didn't need to, because his character spoke louder than any resume ever could. Michelle took a deep breath, and for the first time that night, she really saw Mr. Thomas. Not the apron, not the job, the person. That Monday, everything changed. Over the weekend, Ava had posted a short clip on social media. Just 20 seconds, Mr. Thomas signing her notebook with the caption, "I met the Thomas E. Hart in my school cafeteria today." It exploded. By Sunday night, the video had over 2 million views. By Monday morning, the school was buzzing. Teachers were whispering in hallways. Parents were texting each other furiously. Some even Googled his name just to make sure it was really him. And there he was, same apron, same calm demeanor, scooping green beans onto plastic trays like nothing had happened. But this time, people saw him. The principal called him into the office mid-morning. "I didn't know we had that Thomas Hart working in our kitchen," she said, stunned. Mr. Thomas just smiled. "I didn't think it mattered." "It does," she whispered. "It really does." By lunch, the local news had shown up. Cameras rolled as students laughed and lined up, more excited than usual to be served by a now viral personality. He gave no interviews, just waved them off kindly, staying focused on the kids. Michelle, meanwhile, was unraveling. She sat in her SUV after drop-off, reading comment after comment on Ava's post. Left speech bubble, "This man changed my life after hearing his talk on grief." Left speech bubble, "I went to one of his workshops. He helped me through burnout." Left speech bubble, "He's a legend in psychology circles." What's he doing in a cafeteria? The more she read, the smaller she felt. She scrolled until she found it, a clip from a university lecture, Mr. Thomas, standing in front of a crowd, commanding the room with quiet authority, talking about emotional intelligence, about the dignity of service, about how status is a distraction from impact. She watched it twice. At school, Michelle tried to recover some sense of control. She brought up a proposal in a PTA meeting about reassessing staff placement for media visibility and was quickly shut down. Someone else said, "Honestly, Michelle, I think Mr. Hart is exactly where he wants to be. And maybe that's the point." She didn't have a reply. By midweek, the district had offered him a leadership role in character development, a special position to inspire students and guide emotional intelligence programming. He declined. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I'm exactly where I want to be." The staff was stunned. Why would someone with his background choose a cafeteria? He answered once, simply, "Because this is where I get to see the results of kindness in real time. Because here, the lessons aren't theoretical, they're in every smile, every thank you, every child who feels seen." But behind that choice was more. He told one teacher quietly, "I spent years flying across the country teaching strangers. Now I get to show kids love where they eat, where they laugh, where they grow." That evening, as Mr. Thomas swept the floor after dinner duty, he noticed someone standing quietly by the doorway. It was Michelle. For the first time, she didn't have her designer bag. No flashy sunglasses. Just her, hands folded, eyes low. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. Mr. Thomas paused, leaning on the broom. "You don't owe me anything. No. I judged you, mocked you, and I was wrong." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We all make assumptions. What matters is what we do when we realize they were wrong." She looked up at him, teary-eyed. "Ava talks about you all the time now. She's reading your book. She wants to do a presentation on you for Career Week." Mr. Thomas chuckled. "Tell her she can pick someone more exciting." Michelle smiled. "No. She picked someone real." Then she turned to leave but paused. "Thank you for staying, for not letting people like me chase you away." He nodded once more. "That's not why I'm here. I'm here because some things are too important to walk away from." The next day, something small but powerful happened. Michelle showed up early to help clean the cafeteria before lunch. No announcement, no attention, just quiet, humble help. When one of the other moms asked why, she simply said, "I'm learning." That moment was never broadcasted. No one posted about it. It didn't go viral. But for Michelle, it was the most important part. Because in the end, the biggest lessons don't come in grand speeches or viral videos. They come in quiet corrections, in humility, in learning to see people clearly. And on that Monday, Michelle didn't just see Mr. Thomas. She saw herself, the version that could still change. In the weeks that followed, the cafeteria didn't change, but everything around it did. Mr. Thomas still showed up early, prepping trays and checking the ovens, still wore his apron, still smiled at every student who passed by, still offered an extra cookie when someone looked like they were having a tough day. But now, there was a new layer to how people looked at him, not with fame-struck stares, not even with guilt, but with respect. Teachers began stopping by during lunch to ask questions, not about food, but about life. One math teacher asked him how he stayed so calm. A guidance counselor asked for advice on helping a student through grief. A janitor simply said, "Thank you, brother. You remind me of who I want to be." Even the students shifted. They started saying thank you more often, started asking how his day was going. A few even joined him in the kitchen on volunteer days, just to learn something cool. Michelle kept showing up too. At first, she only helped on Fridays. Then she stayed longer. Eventually, she stopped wearing heels to school. Not because anyone told her to, but because something inside her had changed. The shell had cracked. She wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. One afternoon, as she helped refill juice pitchers, she turned to Mr. Thomas and said, "I used to think purpose came from climbing up. But maybe it's about going deep." He smiled. "It's about staying rooted." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for showing me that." Her daughter, Ava, eventually gave that Career Week presentation. It started with a photo of Mr. Thomas in his apron and ended with a standing ovation. She titled it, "The Man Who Taught Me That Greatness Isn't Always Loud." It wasn't just about him. It was about the lesson he lived every day, that the most powerful people are often the quietest. That kindness doesn't demand recognition. That purpose is a daily practice, not a grand destination. Word about Mr. Thomas spread beyond the school. A local radio show invited him on. He declined. A nonprofit asked him to keynote their annual gala. He politely passed. Instead, he spent that evening helping a student who'd stayed late because her parents couldn't pick her up. That's who he was. And that's what people finally understood. Greatness isn't what you say, it's what you do when no one's watching. Years later, when Ava applied to college, her application essay opened with a single sentence: "My greatest mentor wore an apron, worked a lunch line, and never needed a stage to be extraordinary." It got her into her dream school. But more importantly, it grounded who she became. She studied social work, then education. She said it was because of Mr. Thomas. Michelle, too, changed. She stepped down from the PTA leadership, not out of shame, but because she felt called to serve, not supervise. She started mentoring other moms, started listening more than talking. She even began volunteering at the local shelter, quietly, anonymously. One day, she told a new volunteer, "There was a time I thought leadership meant being seen. But the man who changed my life was never looking for attention. He was just consistent and kind." And that shook me to my core. Mr. Thomas never tried to be a hero. He never tried to go viral. He just showed up, day after day, choosing humility over hype, presence over prestige. That choice changed lives. Michelle would often say, when people asked her how she changed so much, "I met someone who reminded me of who I forgot I was." Because that's what Mr. Thomas did. He didn't give speeches anymore. He was the speech. He was the quiet revolution. If you made it to this point in the story, take a breath. Because what you just heard wasn't just about a cafeteria, a mother, or even a viral moment. It was about you. It was about how easily we can overlook the people who carry the greatest wisdom, how quick we are to judge by appearances, and how rare it is to pause and truly see someone. So here's my question to you. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their job, their clothes, their silence? Have you ever met someone who turned out to be so much more than you expected? If so, share your story in the comments. Not next week. Not later tonight. Right now. Your story could open someone else's heart the same way this one opened yours. And if this video made you feel something, if it made you slow down, reflect, maybe even tear up a little, then help this message reach more people. Tap that like button to push it forward. Hit subscribe to join this growing community of thoughtful people. And send this to someone who needs a quiet reminder of what really matters. This channel isn't about chasing trends or drama. It's about truth. About the kind of stories that remind you who you are, or who you want to become. And if this story stuck with you, it's because you already believe in what Mr. Thomas stood for. Every day, we get to choose what kind of person we'll be. Loud or kind, judging or listening, dismissing or seeing. You don't need to wear a title to matter. You don't need to go viral to be valuable. You just need to show up, with heart, with humility, with purpose. That's how lives change. That's how you change. So thank you for being here. Thank you for staying to the end. And if no one's told you today, you matter more than you know. We'll see you in the next story.